89.5 KPOO San Francisco and KPOO.com. Of course, I'm your man DJ X1. You are in tune to the Bombay Mix, and like I promised, I finally caught up to this brother, man. I'm talking about the most requested speaker in America, the unapologetic Prince of Pan-African, Mr. Umar Johnson. How you doing, family?
Peace and love, Black family. Thanks for having me on the show. Shout out to the Bay Area.
Brother, it's an honor to have you on the show. Now, I know you heard this a million times, but for the people that's not familiar with your works, can you kind of give them a little resume about you?
Sure. I'm Dr. Umar Johnson, Doctor of Clinical Psychology. I do clinical work, therapy, diagnosing of mental illness, and treatment of mental disorders. Expertise is in school psychology, which I've been for almost 20 years now, working in the school setting, evaluating our children for learning disabilities, ADHD, emotional disturbance, intellectual disability, the list goes on. But I would more accurately say fighting in the schools to keep our children away from being diagnosed and out of special education and away from ADHD and psychiatric meds. I'm author of the book, Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys, which is the only book ever written by a black school psychologist that teaches parents how to fight legally and effectively and practically to protect their children. Founder of the National Independent Black Parent Association, and our next training conference is actually in San Diego. I guess we'll get to that. Also founder of the National Movement to Save Black Boys, as well as the Unapologetically African Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Black College and Consciousness Tour that we run every summer for 11 to 17-year-old brothers and sisters. This year we'll be leaving out of Atlanta June 28th until July 12th, 14 days, 14 nights, no parents allowed. And I'm currently raising money to build the first presidential academy in American history based off the principles of revolutionary Pan-African nationalism and international economics, which will be known as the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy.
Now, brother, I'd like to know, how did you get started in that you're doing right about now? Me, personally, I just got hip to you when I seen the Hidden Colors documentary a few years ago, but I know you've been doing your thing way before that. But how did you get inspired to start doing what you're doing right about now?
Well, for me, it was natural. For me, it was very natural. I mean, a lot of people in the conscious community on the circuit, you know, and this is no slant or slight against any of them, but many of them came to consciousness as a reaction to not being allowed to participate in the American social order. So consciousness was not the first choice. It was just the outgrowth or the aftershock or after effect of not being able to participate in mainstream American life. And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people come to consciousness that way. The only problem with that is if they're suddenly invited back to the table of white supremacy, many of them would shed their conscious clothing and go back into the white man's world. For me, our path was different. I've always been into this since I was a young child, and my interest in knowledge itself was probably sparked during a mandatory 4th and 5th grade Black history class that we took at my elementary school, Meade Elementary, North Central Philadelphia. And I think Ms. Green, the teacher there, I think she sparked that in me. And then, not too long after, my father took me to my first family reunion in Baltimore, Maryland, where we were walking in back of a church, and I saw all of this Frederick Douglass paraphernalia. My father, why was this here? And he very nonchalantly told me, because you're related to him. And that's when I realized that I was a descendant of Isaac and Betsy Bailey, which are the same grandparents that raised Frederick Douglass. So I think those two things were key for me, which only emphasizes the need for us to educate our children young. I am an example of what can happen when children get knowledge of self in 4th and 5th grade at 9 and 10, as opposed to waiting until they're 29 and 39. Get it young, and I think it's much more effective that way.
True. Now, I like to spawn black economics and empowerment, because here in America, man, we don't own anything in America. We totally depend on white society to, you know, give us everything we need as far as food, jobs, and all the above. So what is the solution or something that we need to do to get out of this situation as far as economically and empowerment?
Well, first of all, let us be clear. Solutions are always very simple. Solutions are not complicated. The complicated thing is arriving at what the core problem is so that the solution can be determined. The reason why black folks are always debating on how best to solve our reality is because we don't conceptualize the problem effectively. I'm a psychotherapist. So in psychotherapy, or even as a school psychologist, you have to conceptualize the problem right. If you don't conceptualize the problem right, you will not heal it. It's the same thing in medicine. It's the same thing in architecture. It's the same thing for any science. You have to make sure You understand the problem. You have to conceptualize it correctly, because the conceptualization dictates the solution, and it dictates how you will approach that solution. And the key to conceptualization is finding out what the source, what is the core source. Frederick Douglass said it best when he said, so often we strike at the branch and we fail to strike at the root. So let's look at the problem you brought up, economic disempowerment, economic disorganization. Right now, Black America is going through one of its worst economic periods of the calendar year, and that is the Christmas shopping spree. Philadelphia, $3 billion on Christmas. New York City, $8 billion on Christmas. Detroit, $5 billion. I'm not saying million, I'm saying billion with a black B. That's how much money we spend just for today. Today, and tomorrow morning is when we go through that post-shopper's depression, when you realize you bought a whole bunch of junk that either you nor your children needed and probably didn't even want. So the core of economic disorganization for black folks is the fact that we do not mind not having any power over our reality. In order to discipline your shopping, in order to sacrifice the things you want for the things that you need, in order to participate in the economic realization of African people here and abroad, because as a Pan-Africanist, I look at the whole chessboard, not just one block. But in order to do all that, you must want to control your destiny. Black people do not have a desire to control their destiny. We are allergic to power. We are allergic to power. Any discussion on power, black people run away. And part of that comes from slavery. We were taught that power was not our domain. We were made permanently powerless. And when slavery ended, we continued to operate in a consciousness of psychological powerlessness. So half of it is conditioned. Half of it is learned behavior. Half of it is the 500-year-old Ma'afa. The other half is that psychological powerlessness, gets reinforced through the churchical system. And that's not just Christianity, that's Islam, that's most religions that we belong to. They place a premium. They value poverty. They value powerlessness. In church, you're constantly told that the meek shall inherit the earth, that the poor shall get to heaven, that a rich man will get to an eye of a needle, a camel will go through an eye of a needle before a rich man will enter paradise. So slavery conditions you to be psychologically powerless, and religion reinforces it.
Now, I speak a lot on economics. Like, we are the richest, should I say, America have the richest African American in the world. We got our so-called Oprahs, we got our LeBron James, and so on. And I always say, why don't some of these people buy land, build schools, build grocery stores, and so on, because they have the finance to do it. Why they don't step up to the plate and make that happen for their people?
Well, number one, I'm not so sure that we can separate the celebrities from the rest of the community. It's true that they are in a much, much, much better economic position than the rest of us to make things happen. But the truth of the matter is they were conditioned with the same type of psychological powerlessness, self-hate, and allergy to power that the rest of us have. When you become rich, you don't automatically start caring about your community. In fact, you care about them less the more you go up the social-economic ladder, because your friends and your social group are more in line with the values and principles of mainstream white racist America, not in line with the power, with the principles and ideology of working class and underclass black folks. So although they are guilty of ignoring the race, so are we. We spend $600 million on McDonald's every year. You don't need Oprah. Take that $600 million on McDonald's. We spend $2 billion on athletic wear. We don't need Jay-Z. Just stop wasting your $2 billion. We spend $4 billion on malt liquor and alcohol. We don't need Beyonce. We have the ability ourselves to solve our own problems. So for me, I cannot pass the buck to the celebrities, because to pass the buck to the celebrity is once again absolving everyday black folk of the fact that they have the economic potential to empower themselves with or without any participation from celebrity blacks.
Now, this next one is a two-part question. Since since Mr. Trump got into the office, a lot of people was talking about they want to leave America, they want to go to Cuba, they want to go to Africa, and all we say, well, what Africa do we have to go to? Because we already got South Africa taken over by the Europeans. You got a lot of Asians that's buying up land from Ethiopia. So I mean, will we be able to go back to Africa if we decide to do that? And the second part of that, why don't Africa continue the works that Gaddafi laid down for them?
Well, first of all, yes, Africa is a very realistic repatriation focus and goal for American Africans. In fact, one of the things I'm working on for 2017 is the Repatriation Task Force, where we're going to go to Africa and live there for 90 days consecutively, and we're going to investigate all of the different institutions and aspects of African society in that particular country. And if we like it, if we're comfortable enough, and we'll discuss and debate and dialogue on this, we're going to put our money together and buy a very, very large piece of land in that country and begin to build a community for Africans from the West who want to come back home and settle. Africa is without question the destination. Coming from a Garveyite perspective, coming from a revolutionary Pan-African nationalist perspective, unlike my Moorish brothers who want to reclaim America through laws and treaties, and I respect that, but I don't see any hope in that. The hope for African people, as Marcus Garvey said, is in a political economic relationship with the African continent. Central to Pan-African thought, central to Pan-Africanology, central to Pan-African destiny is the rehabilitation of the mother continent. Garvey said, a rich man is rich everywhere, and a poor man is poor everywhere, and a man with respect is respected everywhere. Chinese get respect because China gets respect. British get respect because Great Britain get respect. White America gets respect. Okay, white Americans get respect because the USA get respect, and Africans get no respect. Nowhere on the planet. I don't care if you're in Brooklyn, the Bahamas, Bermuda, Birmingham, okay, or South Africa. Wherever you go, black people are ignored and walked over by Chinese, Arabs, whites, Europeans, Latinos, and others because Africa is not strong. And the natural disrespect that is shown to the mother is automatically reflected upon the children.
Now, how come the African doesn't run any of their own resources over there, our brothers, should I say? I mean, we got all the gold over there, we got all the coal, silver, any natural resource you can think of is over there, and we control none of it. Why is that? I mean, Africa should be the richest continent in the world. They should be running the world. So why they don't control anything of their natural resources over there?
Now, remember, their situation is no different than ours. They don't control the gold. We don't control the politicians. They don't control the diamonds. We don't control our corner store. They don't control the oil. We don't control our churches. So this is an international phenomenon where black folks do not control their wealth and do not control their institutions. So it's no different in Africa. It's just that the stakes are higher because Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth. We also need to keep in mind that Africa just crawled out of her colonialism in the 1960s. So freedom for African people is a relatively new phenomenon. They've only been out of colonialism since the 60s. And when you look at South Africa has only been out of colonialism since 1994. So you're only looking at 20 years. This is the first generation of African youth who were actually born post-apartheid. We had our freedom for 150 years. They only had this for 60. So if we are still struggling, we should not expect them to not be struggling also. Why? Because the whole African world, the whole diaspora, looks at the black man and black woman's conduct in America, and we are the compass for all other African people. We determine what they do. We determine what they think. We determine their priorities. Every African in the diaspora, at least 90% of them, be just like us, and that's sad. It's sad because we don't have our act together. It's sad because we are in love with white folks, and we're selling the whole global African world down the drain by being a very poor example of what an African should be. Whether we like it or not, we are the leaders of the race. That's the way it is. It is a blessing and it is a curse. If we get our situation together, it is a blessing. Why? Because because that $600 million on McDonald's, that $9 billion on weave and perm, if we were able to organize that money, do you know we could finance every African nation on the face of the earth? We would be able to bring the Caribbean into the 21st century. We would be able to bring our African countries into the 21st century. If the black man and woman in America gets her situation together, then guess what? The whole African world gets its situation together. The problem is we're not even thinking about getting our situation together because blacks in America are unapologetically in love with white folks.
Now, a lot of African Americans feel they don't have a connection with Africa, and they speak upon buying land here in America. Would that even be possible? Would white America, even, or should I say white supremacy, even let us buy land, thousands of acres of land here in America to have our own, like we did in Tallahassee?
You can buy land, but you can never really be the outright owner. In the states of America, the government can declare jurisdiction over any land that you own and declare that it is in the best interest of them to confiscate your land in the name of public domain. So no matter what you buy or what you own, it can be taken, period. And along with that, we've had examples of our past. I was in a documentary that's out now, Wilmington on Fire, about the Wilmington, North Carolina race riots. I actually be speaking in Durham, North Carolina on the 6th of January. But we've also had Tulsa, we had Rosewood, Charleston, South Carolina. We've had dozens of black Wall Streets, including Durham itself, where black people built and the whites came in and they destroyed it. Now, of course, with Tulsa and with Rosewood and with Wilmington, you have some of the more aggressive assaults by white supremacy to tear down examples of independent black economic power. But the truth of the matter is white folks will come and destroy it again. You have to understand the rules of racism. Black power is a contradiction to racism. White power cannot allow black power to stand next to it. Why? Black power is the equivalent of white power. And under white supremacy, equality under white supremacy, equality under white supremacy is a sin.
Now, if we don't get our act together within the next 3 to 4 years, what does the future look like for the black man and woman here in America?
Well, number one, they're keeping our population standstill. And it's amazing because all the black folks who's running around worshiping Barack Obama was a terrible president for black America. Not only did he do nothing for us, he never even spoke up for us. Now, of course, the president has really did anything of significance for black folks, but every president has had to give lip service to the issues that affect black folks, which does reverberate on the local level and open up things and stops other things for black folks. Barack Obama is the first president in American history who never even spoke. Forget the laws, forget the legislation, forget doing anything. Barack Obama is the first president in American history who never even spoke to your issues. He's the first president in American history to openly sanction gay marriage, and he's the first president in American history to literally push homosexual, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender lifestyle down black America's throat. Obama was made president so that he could hoodwink the entire black community into accepting population control in the name of homosexuality. I do not hate or disdain our homosexual and lesbian brothers and sisters. And I think they would agree with me that they're not necessarily looking for homosexuality and lesbianism to be a normal way of family community. Most homosexuals and lesbians who I've spoken with, although we disagree on certain things, they would tell you in a minute, I'm not interested in my children being what I am. I'm not interested in making every black person swallow this lifestyle. But that's exactly what Barack Obama did. He made every black person swallow homosexuality. 8 years ago, the black community was not a homosexual community. 8 years ago, we've always had homosexuals, but there was a code. There was a code of conduct. There was a code of ethics. There were certain things they could and could not do when they were around the children. Barack Obama erased that. In 8 years, Barack Obama has been able to change the entire structure of the black heterosexual one into an open homosexual culture. That is done for population control purposes. So is abortion. We've aborted over 2 or 3 million babies since 1970. That's how many babies black folks have murdered. In fact, we kill more in the stomach than we ever kill on the street corner. Let me say that again, because the Crips and the Bloods, and shout out to the Crips and the Bloods. I heard they're doing a lot of positive work these days in the community. Shout out to them brothers. But the gangs will get a lot of attention on what they used to do or what some of them might still be doing. The gangbangers, the drug dealers, so forth and so on. They're not the leading cause of casualty in the black community. The leading cause of casualty in the black community is abortion. And then you add to that AIDS, which is the number one killer of black women on the face of the earth from their mid-30s to the mid-50s. And then you look at malnutrition, famine, heart disease, diabetes. They literally have about 25 different strategies at play right now, not to oppress black people, but to exterminate. And your listeners really need to understand that the current movement against Africans is not a movement to oppress. Oppression is over. Oppression is over. This is extermination. They want a world without the American African. And once they have a world without the American African, they're working on a world without the African African. That's right. You have countries in Africa right now where if the current population control strategies continue to be pushed, of course we got Bill Gates and the Rockefeller World Population Council and others who are pushing this population control disaster. If this continues, you're going to see African countries. You heard it from me first. I haven't been wrong on a prediction yet. You're going to see an African country, several of them, in the next 10 to 20 years, where Africans are no longer the numerical majority in their own country. I had this discussion when I was in Kenya 2 months ago. I had discussion when I was in South Africa 2 months ago. I had this discussion when I was in Lesotho 2 months ago. I've also had the conversation in Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, Liberia, and other places I've been around the African continent. They're trying to make us a minority even in the places where we live. Fear of a black planet. Public Enemy said it best back in the 90s. Fear of a black planet, but we can look at it now and say the erasing of a black planet. His ultimate goal is extermination of the African genotype, because as long as there's a black man or black woman breathing on the face of this earth, the white genotype is under threat.
Now, do medicine ties in with that? Because I recently went to the hospital and discovered that I have high blood pressure, and the doctor told me, like, oh, I have this pill that works great for African American, and I'm really scared to take the pill, man. I ain't gonna even lie.
I wouldn't take it, brother. If I was you, I would get with Dr. like Ela Africa, who's up in Indianapolis. Okay, I would get with brother Scott Whitaker. Okay, and not only that, we got dozens of herbologists and nutritionists within the black community who can help you work with your high blood pressure, my brother. Normal altering of your diet, more exercise, and I need to get on that bandwagon myself, but I wouldn't take it, my brother. The first thing that needs to be done, and I just did a live feed on Facebook about ADHD medicine the night before last, and if any of your listeners have children on ADHD, they should go to my Facebook page, Dr. Umar Ifatunde. I use my Yoruba name on Facebook, so it's Ifatunde, Ifatunde, and the profile pic is myself and Brother Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club. But they can watch that because I talk about the side effects of the psychiatric meds that they give out to children. There was an article that came out that I read a couple of years ago. It talked about black people in medicine, pharmaceuticals, and it said that most black people are dying from the effects of the drugs, not from the disease, my brother. The drugs are killing us more than the diseases for which they were prescribed. So being a young brother like yourself, heart disease, high blood pressure, that is definitely manageable without pharmaceuticals.
Now, I just got hip to this organization called the Alt-Right. I'm not too for sure what it is, but it's the Alt-Right, like another white supremacy organization?
I'm not familiar with them. What I do know is that there's a lot of white supremacist groups. A lot of them were created during the Obama administration. As you know, white America bought a record number of guns and bullets during the Obama years. And from what I'm hearing now, black folks are buying record numbers of guns and bullets because they're preparing with what appears is going to be an all-out assault on black people. I hate to say this. I hate to say it, but I have to be a realist. And being a historian and a politician, historian by interest, politician by training, political science major rather than politician, political scientist, when I look at the writing on the wall, it speaks very clearly to the fact that white America is going to try to do something very soon to try to repress, oppress, and reduce the number of black people in this country. We've had these types of assaults all throughout American history, and I think you're going to get more. Even now, with the election of Donald Trump, white people are re-energized again. They have a white man back in the White House. They never wanted Obama. They were forced to accept Obama. Remember, Barack Obama beat John McCain in the first election by the size of a small state. The popular vote, he beat John McCain by the size of a small state. Half of America did not want Obama. I would even argue that Obama probably really didn't win. They just fixed the numbers. White America never wanted a black president. That was total nonsense. Obama was put in there by the power structure because he needed a president who could go into Africa and build relationships with the African countries that were conducive to the re-exploitation of African wealth in mineral by the Western powers, UK, France, America in particular. Okay? And so Obama was done for that. He was also done to homosexualize the black community. That's why Obama was elected. And he has achieved it. It was done for black issues, domestication issues, and exploitation of Africa issues. That's why Hillary Clinton lost. Hillary Clinton didn't lose because she was Hillary Clinton. Don't get me wrong, she was not very popular. But the reason she lost is because she was Barack Obama's Secretary of State. She was still seen as a member of the black administration. And they wanted nobody in the world who even remotely was connected to the black administration. Donald Trump won even with no political experience because he was the exact opposite personality-wise as Barack Obama. Barack Obama was very meek, very humble, very cowardly, very unassertive. He was very unapologetic. He really answered the question straightforward. He was not masculine at all. He's not a masculine person. Donald Trump is very masculine. He's very unapologetic. He's very assertive. Okay? He doesn't script his answers. Donald Trump might say some dumb shit. Yes, he does. He's a fool when it comes to politics, but he's honest. And white America has spoken very loud. They would rather have an uneducated, unapologetic, white masculine idiot than a well-educated, meek, humble black man. That election was to teach Barack Obama a lesson. Just like the Bill Cosby a lesson. Just like they had to teach O.J. Simpson a lesson. And the lesson is, don't you ever think for 1 minute, just because we make you president, we can make you rich, we can make you a celebrity, we can make you a superstar. Never for 1 minute ever think that just because we approved you to do a job for us, that we will ever mistake you for being one of us. White supremacy.
Now, sometimes when you speak on white supremacy, a lot of white America think you're talking about them. Now, white supremacy is not all white America. It's just basic 5 groups that are white supremacy.
Well, let me clarify. All white people are racist. Let's clarify. All white people are racist. There's not a human on the planet who is not a racist. Now, let's clarify that. Racism has nothing to do with attitude and emotion. That's why black people don't understand white supremacy. Because you keep thinking it has something to do with attitude and emotion. The most effective racists in history had no attitude, no emotion towards black people. Because racism is not about attitude and emotion. Racism is about power and privilege. Let me say it again. Racism is about power and privilege. A white person may have nothing against you personally. You know white people who have nothing against you personally. I know white people who have nothing against Dr. Umar Johnson personally. But they all belong to a group that values and requires power and privilege in order for domination because they are a numerical minority. So it's nothing personal. And our talk, we keep looking at it through an emotional lens, a personality lens, a hatred. This has nothing to do with hatred. Racism is business. That's all. And it is the business of keeping folks in charge. Period, point blank in the story. And this is why a lot of black people get their feelings hurt by white folks. They're thinking, okay, she's my friend, he's my friend, they care about me. That might be true. But guess what? If you're about to do something that's going to threaten their control and power over local affairs, regional affairs, state affairs, national affairs, international or global affairs, guess what? They will assassinate you. Why? Because their commitment, their loyalty, their patriotism to white power is far more important than any irrelevant personal relationship they have with black people. Until we understand that, we understand nothing. And that's why I'm to the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey RBG International Leadership Academy for Pan-African Excellence, because our sons have to be taught these rules. Too many black boys are being suspended and expelled because their parents are not teaching them about white supremacy. You don't get mad when the teacher does something wrong. You write it down. You keep a log. You give it to your parent. Your parent gets in contact with other black parents, and then they come together and they report a class action discrimination lawsuit with the United States Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights. There's ways to handle this without emotion. As long as black folks going to keep dealing with white supremacy through emotion, we're going to lose. This is business. It ain't personal.
Now, can you speak on your experience that you saw on a museum that you went to recently that was built by George Bush's wife? I'm not for sure the name of the museum.
Well, the Smithsonian National Museum of African American Culture in Washington, D.C., that came with a $549 million price tag, in my opinion, coming from my level of consciousness, okay, as a Pan-African nationalist, a Garveyite, an African fundamentalist, it was an absolute disgrace. An absolute disgrace. The bottom floor was slavery. The second floor was civil rights abolition, the Civil War into Reconstruction, and then coming into the Civil Rights era. And then the top two floors was almost exclusively dedicated to athletics and entertainment. So if you don't understand anything about African slavery, you would think that about African history, you would think that our world experience began in slavery and ended with Michael Jordan. It was an absolute disgrace. You do not give athletics and entertainment that much attention in a so-called museum for African history and culture. It's not for African entertainment and music. It's history and culture. You saw very little African history in there. Okay, you saw very little African culture in there. You saw slavery, Civil War, LeBron James, and Venus and Serena. That's what you saw. We didn't need to spend the $49 million on that. What they should have done was gave us that $549 million, and we could have did what? Build schools for our children. Build hospitals for our people. Build homes for our elderly. Okay? We could have built gas stations, factories, airlines, import-export industry. But under white supremacy, what's one of the rules of white supremacy? You never empower black people economically. You never empower. Give them a handout, but you never empower them. We need to understand this. So they'll give you food stamps. They'll give you Section 8. They'll give you, and they'll go to Africa and give you mush so you can feed your baby so they don't starve. They will give you anything you want except the ability to do so yourself. And that's why the weapon of the Pan-Africanist is self-reliance and self-determination. That is our MAC-10. That is our Uzi. That is our sword. That is our shield. Self-determination in all things. We believe that what is to be done for African people must be done by African people. And whenever we let another man or woman do for us what God gave us the ability to do for ourselves, we insult and disrespect the spirit that's inside of us.
Now, what would your vision be if you had the opportunity to actually build an African American history museum?
First of all, there should have been an entire floor on African inventors. There should have been an entire floor on African inventors. They had a couple of them in there, but you had more damn athletes and entertainers. Do you know how much we've invented in this world? Do you know our scientific contribution to the United States? Do you realize that in suffering scientists had to go through, like Dr. George Washington Carver, who had his testicles cut off from his body? The things that we had to go through, the racism. We invented the gas mask, the helicopter, internet, cell phone, the Hummer truck, the Cadillac truck, the self-lubricating engine, the radio. I mean, there's so much. What didn't we invent is the question. What didn't African people invent? Lewis Latimer wrote the textbook that taught countries, how you can light up an entire city at night. They took Lewis Latimer to China. The Chinese, who we think, they called on a black scientist, Lewis Latimer, to go to China and teach the Chinese electrical engineering. He went to the UK to teach them electrical engineering. He went to Canada to teach them electrical engineering. How do you have a museum? How? With a whole floor or almost a whole floor of athletics, almost a whole floor of entertainment, but you ain't got a whole floor for science and invention. There should have been a whole floor on revolutionary Pan-African nationalism and slave revolt. A whole floor of resistance. There should have been a whole floor on the miseducation of black children. A whole floor on police genocide of black people. A whole floor on traditional African culture and spirituality so they understand who we were before we got here. And then at the bottom of the basement in the cafeteria to put the cherry on top of the disrespect and insult to Africa. They serving chicken, greens, mac and cheese, pork and beans, hog's head, and all this bullshit. They giving you slave diet inside of a museum on African history and culture at the price tag of $549 million.
Watch your language, good brother. I have one more question. Why is the black man and woman such a threat to white supremacy when we have nothing and did nothing to them?
Because you possess the genes. that can exterminate the race. The one thing African people have that no one else can take or replace, genetic superiority to reproduce another people out of existence. We should not be doing that, because it is my position no black man should be cohabitating with a white woman or anything other than a non-African woman, and the same thing goes for the system. But because you have that genetic domination, that in and of itself is a threat. Keep in mind, the entire system of Jim Crow, the entire system of apartheid, the entire system of racism is based on the separation of the black man's penis and the white woman's vagina. That's why segregation exists, to eliminate the opportunity for sexual engagement between black men and white women. That is the sole basis of the segregation. So we got to understand how much we are hated for what we possess. It doesn't matter if you're unemployed, fresh out of jail, on drugs, poor, homeless, psychologically insane, destitute, whatever the case may be. Bottom line is, when you walk into a room of other men, you're the only man in that room who can reproduce women out of existence.
Now, recently, Brother Killer Mike had, said a statement to African Americans that we need to put our money in black banks. What's your take on African Americans putting their money in black banks opposed to any other bank like Bank of America, Chase Bank, and so on?
I think it was a good thing. I think it was a good thing, and he wasn't the only one. I actually had said it. Other people had said it too. A shout out to Killer Mike. I definitely think it was a good thing. But see, here's the issue with that. A lot of African-American banks don't have an African-American agenda. Most black banks in America have a capitalistic ideal. They have a capitalistic agenda. They're not looking to empower blacks. They're looking to take more of black people's money and share it amongst the black bourgeoisie economic elite. So what we need to do is we need to start building independent grassroots black credit unions and independent grassroots black banks. It only takes $250,000 to start a credit union. It only takes $1 million to start a bank. So that means without Christmas spending, do you know how many credit unions we could have started? Without Christmas spending, do you know how many banks we could have started? We can do this on our own. Now, I'm not knocking the black banks that exist, okay, but they need to reorient their focus, because most of them are just black capitalist institutions. I'm not interested in black capitalism no more than I'm interested in white capitalism. I'm looking for banks that are about the re-empowerment of the black community, institutionalization. If the bank ain't building a hospital, what is it there for? If the bank ain't building a school, what is it there for? If the bank ain't building a hospital, a factory, an airline, what is it there for? If the bank isn't building an import-export, what is it there for? If the bank isn't financing small black businesses, what is it there for? The only institution I see black banks financing in the black community are churches. And the last thing we need is another church, because the church is one of the biggest parasitic institutions in the black community. Now, let me clarify. There's exceptions to that rule. I speak in black churches on a regular basis, probably more than any other scholar in the country. So I will paint every pastor with the same brush. But if we are going to be honest, we have to admit that at least 90% of the black banks in America are guilty of the exact same thing that we complain that Arabs and Chinese and East Indians and Jews and Anglo-Saxons are doing to us, and that is raping the black dollar. They're giving us nothing in return. $100 million mortgage on a prayer house, what you need that for? $50 million mortgage on a prayer house, what you need that for? $75 billion mortgage on a prayer house, what do you need that for? The black church is doing the devil's work, because it's taking black people's money, using it on the church, not putting nobody to work, building no schools up. How can you have a church worth that type of money and you don't have any industries to support the church? If you don't have any industries to support the church, that means the sole responsibility of paying that mortgage is on the back of the black folks who go to that church. And then all that black money on Monday, because the day's Sunday, so the day was church, okay, Christmas service. Tomorrow, all that money they collected today at the Christmas service is going to go into a white bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of Manhattan, go to a white bank, and they're going to take all black people's Jesus money, and they're going to give it to white folks to come into the black community and retrench us, push us out, buy up all the land, close down the public schools, turn them into mansions. Most of what you see happening in the black community against us is being funded by black church collection dollars.
Now, why won't the black church get rid of the white Jesus? I mean, in the Bible itself, it says that Jesus has hair of wool, skins of bronze, and the Jesus that's on the picture is nothing like that. So why won't the church get rid of the white Jesus and put an image of themselves up there?
Because black people love white people. Deep within the consciousness of every black person is the ideal of wanting to be white. If half the black people in America could snap their fingers and be white with no one having known that they were black, they would do so. If half the blacks in America could snap their fingers twice and become white with no one having ever known that they were African, they would do so. Our inferiority complex is central to our self-hatred. It is central to our self-hatred. People say, remember I said you got to strike at the root, not at the branches. The self-hate is not a core cause. The self-hate is a branch. The root from which the self-hate sprung is the inferiority complex of African people. And let me say this to the black conscious community. You will not eliminate your inferiority complex alone by reading books about African history and culture, about reading the greatness of our people. Why? Because your inferiority complex is the result of not teaching, but of training. It is not of book learning, but of physical action. They put us through a ritual. Slavery was an unholy ritual. You were put through practices that made you feel inferior to white people. They didn't sit you at a desk and give you a book and say, read this, and you started hating yourself. No, they put you through rituals. They beat you, they raped you, they sodomized you, they forced you to work without pay, they cursed you. They put you through a ritual. It wasn't just book learning. And I'm saying this because there's this idea that if black people, we can read our ways out of self-hatred. Some of us believe, some scholars believe, and some of the conscious speakers believe that we can actually read ourselves out of self-hate. You can read every book in the black bookstore and you will still be a self-hate Negro because the unconscious is conditioned through training. It is repetitive action that makes the unconscious. It is only the conscious mind that is made with book learning. So when you say you're conscious, you're simply talking about that 20% of brain power over which you exercise conscious control. That's where all the books you read. That's where that Dr. Ben book. That's where the Amos Wilson lecture is. That's where the Dr. Umar DVD is. That's in your conscious. But that 80%, that was made by slavery. And the only way you're going to be able to rehabilitate your unconscious mind is to put yourself through the same rituals that slavery put us through. Not the same type of ritual, but the same type of intensity so you can shock the unconscious mind out of the self-hating state. That is why education is so important for our children, because we can still control a child's environment. You can control a child's environment. You cannot control an adult environment. You cannot make another black person do what they don't want to do. But children, you can. And that's why I'm starting with education.
So I guess that ties into my next question. Why do so many of our people unconsciously hate themselves, and why do our women are so embarrassed to wear their own hair? I haven't seen a black woman in a long time that's naturally wearing her own afro or her own hair. I see most of them in weave, extensions, and wigs, and so on.
Well, you can thank the black man for that partly. The black woman does have an inferiority complex. She has one like we have one. Her inferiority complex leads her to try to look like a white woman, and our inferiority complex leads us to try to marry a white woman. So we both have the same inferiority complex. It just expresses itself differently. Black men heal the black woman from her low self-esteem. Black men can heal our sisters from that. Every woman in America would feel natural tomorrow if she knew black men would appreciate her natural beauty. The reason black women manufacture themselves up like Barbie dolls is because they know that that's all the black man wants to see. If the woman doesn't have a European veneer, if she doesn't have a European mystique, if she doesn't have a European phenotype, we are not. That goes for so-called conscious brothers too, because a lot of them will talk that black power stuff and want to deal with a nappy-headed, big-lipped, chocolate-skinned sister. And so it is the black man's fault that the black woman is still not natural.
Now, for the last 400-some years and today, a lot of our brothers been getting beat by the police, murdered by the police, killed by the police, and now they're even killing our sisters and beating our sisters down on videotape. You know what I mean? And And in the 70s, the Black Panther, they were so tired of seeing that they actually went to the streets to patrol their own streets. Now, is it possible if African Americans can kind of form our own police system without using America system?
Yes, you could. But here's the problem with that. You have to create a sense of internal integrity within the black community where we as a people are willing to be accountable to each other. That doesn't exist nowhere. Talk to any black person who has ever been in charge of other black people. I'm a school principal, former school principal. I quit the last job because I couldn't run the school the way that I needed to. But sometimes your toughest teachers are the black teachers. If you ever been manager at your job over black folks, you'll notice that black people sometimes have a problem than the white folks do. Because we were conditioned to believe that we were nothing. It goes back to the inferiority complex. Why should I respect you when you are the same as me, a worthless Negro? So the reason black people don't respect black people is they don't think blackness is worthy of respect. Remember, the black person who disrespects you because you're black doesn't think much of themselves. So that would be beautiful if we could create internal police systems for the black community, but then you commitment from black people that I'm not calling 911 no more. I'm going to call whatever number we put together. Okay? But that takes a degree of loyalty. That takes a degree of commitment. That takes a degree of love that we don't have for each other. When I was in the Garvey movement, well, I still am, but when I was a member of the 121 division here in Philadelphia, I remember we were at a meeting one time, and one of the elders who was a member of the UNIA ACL with me, which for your listeners is the movement that Marcus Garvey started that gave us the red, black, and green flag and still is the largest black organization in modern history. He said, sarcastically but very honestly, and I think very truthfully, he said, if you want black people to work together, you have to put a white person in charge. This is coming, but he was so true. He was being sarcastic because obviously as Pan-Africanists, we don't believe in white control. But he was making a very serious psychological point. If you want black people to work together, you have to put a white person in charge because we adore white folks and we abhor blackness. I said we adore A-D-O-R-E white folks and we abhor black folks, A-B-H-O-R, absolutely hate each other. So that means you have to psychologically re-engineer black folks. And I think we can still work with a lot of the adults. There's a lot of black folk who do want to change. I think a lot of them say they superficially want to change, but deep down I don't think they really are ready to go through the process necessary to kill the Negro so you can bring about the African. And let me say that again, and that's a direct quote from Dr. Umar Johnson. In order for the African to be born, the Negro has to die. In order for the African to be born, the Negro has to die.
Now, brother, you have written a few books. Can you tell the people the books that you have written and how they can get them?
Well, I've written a lot of articles, only one book so far, working on 3 others, and that book is Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys, which is an absolute read for my brothers and sisters over in California. You can purchase a copy of that book and come see Dr. Umar Johnson live twice next month. I will be in Los Angeles, California, the first Saturday of the new year. That's January the 7th, Saturday, January the 7th at the Ward AME Church in Los Angeles, South Central. And I will be in San Diego the last Sunday of January. That's January the 29th at the World Beat Cultural Center. So you can see me the first Saturday in LA in January or the last Sunday in San Diego in January. And I also want to invite all my brothers and sisters on the West Coast, not just the state of California, but we're looking at Washington, we're looking at Oregon. I'm going to include Arizona in there, Vegas, New Mexico. I want to invite all of you out. Those of you who are serious about making a change in our community, I want to invite you to the World Beat Cultural Center on Friday and Saturday, the 2 days prior to the lecture. We'll be hosting the 3rd Regional National Invitation Training for for the National Independent Black Parent Association. The National Independent Black Parent Association, NIBPA, is an organization we started in Baltimore in May of this year to organize black parents in every single city and town and school district in America so we can organize and fight against racism in order to protect our children. There will be a committee on special education to expose and to challenge and to change the special ed process in the local school districts. Too many black kids are being labeled with learning disabilities they don't have. Too many black kids are being labeled with ADHDs they don't have. Too many put on Ritalin, Adderall, Concerta, Cycler. Too many of them are being put in special ed classes all day long. Too many misdiagnosed as retarded. There will be a discipline committee. 2 years ago, United States Department of Education released a report that basically stated that black kids are being suspended and expelled from public school, from kindergarten and first grade at a rate that exceeds the suspension and expulsion of white boys in high school. Absolutely unacceptable. There will be a policy committee to change the rules in the schools that negatively and disproportionately affect our children. There will also be a finance committee to investigate the way the schools districts are spending their money. There will be a social support committee to help our parents who are struggling to take care of their families. There will be a homeschool committee to organize parents who are homeschooling or want to homeschool their children. And the last committee will be parent advocacy. We'll train you to be an advocate. You must come. The training that you're going to get in San Diego is equivalent to what white lawyers will charge you $2,500 a day for. And you get the whole thing for a $50 registration fee that does not go in my pocket, but goes toward covering the expenses of the conference itself, because I take care of all of it out of my pocket. No money is made on the conference. So we want brothers and sisters to come out. We move the conference around to make it easier for people to attend in that region. But anyone in the United States can come. Anyone can come. So the first one was in Baltimore. That was the East region. The second was in Houston this past September. That was the South region. And the third one will be in San Diego, and that will be the West region. And then in May will be in either the Southeast region or the Midwest. So it won't come back to the West again for another year. So we need y'all to take advantage of this. Come on out. You got to get organized. Marcus Garvey said the greatest weapon used against the Negro is disorganization. January 7th, L.A., January 27th to the 29th, San Diego. You can get your tickets online right now. princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com. That's princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com, and we spell Africa with a K.
Brother, we gotta bring you down to the Bay Area real soon.
Well, I've been now by the Bay. Are you speaking of Oakland or San Fran? I know they're near each other, but where are you?
I'm in San Francisco, but I'm in Oakland all the time. I mean, they're like only 5 miles apart, so I'm in both.
I was in Oakland about 6 months ago, I want to say, and I spoke at the Black Repertoire Theater.
Yes.
Black-owned, very nice place, but it was too small for my crowd. We literally had to turn away about 200-300 people. So if you know of a venue that I can rent in Oakland that can seat at least 400, I think 5 might be more of what we need, but at least 4, minimum of 4 seating, not standing. Anyone listening, including, of course, yourself, good brother, as the host, but if anyone has any information on a venue Dr. Umar Johnson can rent in San Francisco or Oakland, please let me know. Text it to me, 215-989-9858, 215-989-9858. Again, 215-989-9858. I like to jump right on that because I want to get to Oakland or San Fran in February, and I have a good sister I'm working with up in Sacramento right now. So I would like to do the Oakland-Sacramento 2-day punch if I can. So if anybody has any venue information for Sacramento, Oakland, San Fran, please text that to your good brother. Also, Seattle. I'm overdue for Seattle. I haven't been there in 4 years. I need a venue in Seattle, Washington as well. One of the biggest reasons people don't see me in their city or see me as much is it's very difficult to find venues. You know, Austin, Texas is another place I need a venue. Chicago, Illinois, we was at the DuSable Museum, but we need a bigger place. So, you know, my crowd is large now, so it's difficult because I got to find places that can seat at least 500. You know, Baltimore, I'm speaking in Baltimore tomorrow, first day of Kwanzaa, almost sold out. Atlanta, New Year's Day, almost sold out. You know, so I got to start finding larger venues so people don't get turned away when they come out to hear Dr. Umar.
Brother, I know a few, so I will be texting it to you today.
Powerful. Let's do it.
So, brother, I would like to thank you so much, man, for speaking on. It was an honor for you to speak on KPO Radio, and we got to bring you back and probably have some of our listeners to call in and actually ask you some questions real soon.
Anytime. Just want to let everybody know every Tuesday we got the Black Parent Teleconference. Any questions about your children, you can call in, get free advice from Dr. Umar. It's every Tuesday morning from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so that'll be 3 to 5 West Coast time. The Black College and Consciousness Tour is coming up, and we also have the 2-week tour to Africa coming up as well. I'm working on that. And, of course, if you want to send your sons or daughters to Atlanta for the 2-week Black College and Consciousness Tour, that registration should be up real soon. You can reach me, drumarjohnson.com, drumarjohnson at yahoo.com, or 8444-DRUUMAR, 8444, Dr. Umar, Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Umar Johnson, and Facebook, Dr. Umar Ifatunde, LA, January 7th. Can't wait to see you.
Thank you so much, Brother Umar, for speaking with us, and we're going to talk to you soon.
Will do. Take care.
What? 89.5 KPOO San Francisco and KPOO.com. Of course, that was the voice of Brother Umar, Dr. Umar Johnson. And we're going to have him back on here. We're going to let you guys call in and ask him some questions. We're going to get back into some more music, and we'll be right back in just a few moments.